Should you play Bonelab VR? This question is something that I feel like a lot of people have debated before in the past. I see it every now and again on the Reddit of people being like, should I get this game? Or like, is this game worth it, etc. And so I want to talk about the pros and cons of Bonelab VR. Now, let's talk about all the pros, and then we'll talk about all the cons afterwards in the second half. So if you want to see all the cons, you can skip to this point in the video and see all of the cons. If you want to see all the pros, I'm going to start with them right now. Starting with the pros, the number one thing is that it has mod support. It has mod support. It's actually implemented into the game recently where you can actually access the mods through the game. You don't have to like have a PC to do it or anything like that. You don't have to have anything fancy. All you have to have is like a mod.io account or whatever, and you can do it super easily from there. It's extremely easy to just throw them on over there. You don't have to have anything super fancy to do it. It just has integrated mod support. I think that's one of the biggest things because this is the main feature of the game essentially. Now, that being said, the mod support maybe is not exactly the best, but it is getting there. Now, number two is that it has good gunplay. The gunplay is actually pretty fun. I personally, at least, think it's pretty fun. I think the reloads are really satisfying. I think the guns have a nice weight to them. They have a good feel to them. There's a bunch of different guns. And of course, if you want just a different kind of combat, melee weapons themselves are pretty fun to use as well. Number three is the price of the game itself. It is not a $60 title, which is kind of an important thing to really look at the grand scheme of things. You really want to look at the price of games, especially if you're debating on whether or not to get it or not. It's not a full $60 title, so it could be worth spending the $40 to get the game, especially since both Steam and Quest have features in them where if you get a game after, like, I think you can't spend more than 2 hours in the game or something like that within 14 days, you can then refund the game or something. There's refund policies on both the Steam and Quest, which actually brings us to the other pro, which is that you can play it on both PC or Quest 2. It works on both those games. It works on either device, and they both run completely fine. Now, of course, on Quest 2, you're going to get a slightly lower quality version of the PC version, but that is just a graphical thing, and it's not really that different. It's literally the same game. Now, next up, we have, of course, Sandbox mode. There are Sandbox modes in this. There's just like big, just flat arenas that you can just spawn stuff in, spawn some NPCs to attack or whatever. And of course, again, with the mod support, there's Sandbox levels, I guess, that you could download and play on and stuff like that. There's also gun trials and arena levels as well, so if you ever get bored, you can go back and you can play some of the gun trials or the arenas. There's also parkour as well. These are really fun if you want to get a really good time on. There's all kinds of shortcuts and fun things you can try to do in these different gun trials and stuff, and it can be kind of fun to try to get the best possible time in those. Next up is secret rooms. There's quite a few secret rooms in the game. They're all over the place. I think literally every single level has at least one secret room in it. I might be wrong about that, but I think almost every single level has one secret room in it. Take it that what you will. If you love finding secrets in video games, if you love finding hidden lore, if you love finding things like that, then this game might be fun for you too, because there is a lot to explore in these different levels if you can find them. Of course, there's tutorials on all of them, so they're pretty much any secret in the game has already been found, so you're probably not going to really find a new one, but take that information what you will. So that is pretty much all the list of pros I have. If you have any other pros or really good reasons to try Bonelab, let me know in the comments below if there's one that I didn't list here. But let's talk about cons now, and the fact that it is a very short game. The game itself is pretty short. Now, the first time you play it, you might think, oh, this game is actually kind of long. It's got a lot of depth to it. It's got a lot of stuff going on with it, because the first time you play it, at least for someone like me, you're going to explore every inch of every level every single time you get to a new level or a new area. You're going to explore every inch of it before you move on, and you know the game has a lot of secrets in it. You're gonna do this kind of thing. And doing that with every single level, it is going to pad out the game time. It is going to make the game feel like it's a lot longer, but even then, you're probably going to finish the game in like 10 hours or something. It's not super long. And if you're not doing any of that, if you're not exploring, if you're not trying to find any secrets or anything like that, and you're just trying to do the level itself, you can beat the whole game in like 2 hours without really even trying that hard. Now, next up, and this is probably the most important con, it is an extremely intense game, at least in terms of like the VR legs kind of explanation, I guess. If you have never played a VR game before, don't play Bonelab as your first one. Don't let Bonelab be the first VR game you ever play. Don't let it be probably even the second VR game you ever play, because even if you play something like VR Chat or something like that, and you're like, oh, I don't get sick playing VR, the moment you switch to something like Bonelab, which is an extremely intense motion sickness kind of game, you're gonna start feeling it, and you're gonna be like, oh shit, I can't, oh my god, I can't do this. And you're probably gonna have to shelve it for a while before you can build up your VR legs, your VR immunity, I guess. I don't really know what to call it, to be honest. So if you have motion sickness, maybe don't try this game, or at least wait until you know you can handle intense games. Quest does a great thing on the store. They have a comfort level listed on all of their games. I think it goes from like easy to like moderate to like heavy to like intense. Bonelab is intense, and honestly, it's a little bit step above intense. Now, next up, and this is also important to keep in mind too, Bonelab is extremely easy. The game is super easy. This kind of falls mostly into the fact that the NPCs are dumb as shit, and they just fall over super easily. Most of them can die in like one shot if you hit them in the head or something like that, especially with a melee weapon. You can just bloop, just barely boop them, and they're dead. A lot of enemies die in like 1 or 2 shots. It's super hard to die in this game unless you make a lot of like really kind of silly mistakes, like, oh no, I'm fumbling with my gun, oh no, I dropped my gun, or oh no, I fell in a hole or something. Those are pretty much the only ways you're ever gonna die in this game, because there's not really any points in the game where you're getting super overwhelmed or anything like that. And even when you do, again, all the enemies die in like 1 shot, so it's not hard. The game is super easy, and that is also why the game is super quick and kind of short. Now, talking about sandbox mode, I mentioned before that as a pro that there is a sandbox mode where you can spawn things in and do all kinds of stuff like that. The thing about sandbox mode, however, is that nothing can be saved in those. If I make this wacky contraption in sandbox mode, as soon as I leave that level, or as soon as I turn off my headset or something like that, it is just gone forever. I will never have that contraption again unless I make it from scratch again. So there's no way to save anything. And this is not a Gmod VR title. That is one of the most important things too, is that this isn't just Gmod but in VR. This is a little bit different. You can't save your contraptions and do wacky things like you can in Gmod. Now you can do some wacky things like you can in Gmod, but it is nowhere near on the same level because you can't save things, it doesn't control as easily, all this other stuff. Talking about sandbox mode, all the items and props and things like that you can spawn, including the enemies, you can't spawn right away. So as soon as you pick up this game, you can't go straight to sandbox mode and start playing sandbox mode or anything like that. You have to not only wait until you get to a certain point in the game to play sandbox mode, but you also have to wait until you unlock all the items for sandbox mode. You can't just go into the game, get to the sandbox level like as quickly as possible, which you can do in like honestly like 2 minutes. You can't just do that right off the bat and then spawn in Ford and like the null bodies and all these other enemies and start beating them up and stuff like that. Honestly, I don't even know how many guns you start with when you start the game. So there's a lot of stuff you just don't have in sandbox mode. So if sandbox mode is one of the main things that you want this game for, maybe reconsider as well, because while it does have a very big sandbox mode, it takes a while to do that because you have to unlock every single item before you can place that specific item. So if I want to place a frying pan, I have to wait until I unlock the frying pan to place the frying pan. If I want to spawn a null body, I have to wait until I unlock a null body to spawn a null body, etc. So the sandbox mode, while you do start with some things, there's a lot that you don't start with. And so if sandbox mode is your main thing, maybe reconsider. Or if you do want to do the sandbox mode, you could always just use mods to probably just download all of the unlockables anyway. So there is that technically. This one's going to be very opinion heavy, but I honestly don't think Bonelab has a lot of replayability to it. This is kind of weird to say for someone like me who has made like, I think 7 Mythbusters videos where I replayed the game a bunch of different times, doing a bunch of different myths and stuff. I've done a bunch of different Bonelab challenges, like saving a crablet and carrying a crablet alive through the entire game. I've played the game with 1 arm. I've played the game with Pacifist Run. I've replayed the game several times. I've even tried to speedrun the game before. Never did a video on that because it was really bad. I've done all kinds of stuff like that before. but at the end of the day, the game is only replayable if you do these dumb, silly challenges. The only replayability you really get out of it is the arena mode and things like that. And again, the NPCs are so easy that the arena, you could basically play it indefinitely. I've literally never failed an arena unless I was doing a dumb, silly challenge, like trying to kill NPCs as like a crablet or something. It's just so easy. It's hard to fail an arena challenge because the NPCs are so easy that you could literally spend forever in an arena and never die. Because the arena is so easy, the arena isn't really fun to replay a bunch. The gun trials and the parkour is fun to retry because you can try to get faster and faster times on them and stuff, but even that gets tiring after a few times. So honestly, I don't really think the replayability is super great in this, except with mod support. Again, the only thing that mods are good for is like the replayability and the unlocking of all the items in the sandbox mode. The final con here is that the main story is basically 90% minigames. You do a couple of like levels that are like seemingly normal, and then you get to this point to where you have to start unlocking the avatars to switch between and stuff like that. And it's literally just, hey, we got you want to race, but you're not actually racing anyone. You're just going around a track by yourself. It's really weird that they didn't have it be like you're racing an NPC or something. Isn't it like maybe you wouldn't have to win or something? I don't know, but it's weird that you don't race an NPC, but you do race. It's weird. There's one that's basically just an arena where you punch a bunch of enemies for literally like 2 minutes and then the game is over. There's one where you literally just walk forward and it's over. And then there's one where you jump and then it's over. And then there's a couple of more interesting ones where you have to climb a big pillar. But most of these like things here, the reason why the game is so short is because a lot of the levels can be beaten in like 10 seconds. Again, with the one where you just walk forward, the one where you jump and you're on the moon, you jump, you press the button, it's over. Like there's stuff like that. There's a lot of levels like that where it's just super easy. You can beat them in like 60 seconds most. So that is all the pros and all the cons that I have listed here for Bonelab VR. Let me know in the comments below if there are any more cons that I didn't get to in this video, as well as any pros that I didn't get to in this video. Let me know in the comments below down below, and we can see if anyone else will be able to make a decision based on those pros and cons, plus the pros and cons in this video. So that is all I'm going to say. I can't tell you if this is enough for you to purchase the game or if it is enough for you to not purchase the game. I have given you the pros and the cons of Bonelab, and now it is up to you whether or not you decide to play the game or not. That's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and doing all of those things like that because it greatly helps out the channel a ton, and I very, very, very much appreciate it. So do all those things, and remember, most importantly, to stay asleep.